Welcome to Fantasy Victory Now with Paul Charchian. I'm Mike Durkin, and we start out with a bunch of injuries in Week 6, beginning with Stevan Ridley in New England. Does that mean Shane Vereen's about to put up some big games?
Yeah, you'd like to think so, right? And with a different coach, it might mean more carries for Vereen, but that's just not how Bill Belichick works. He's a firm believer in running backs by committee, and he'll employ another one here with Ridley out. Vereen will continue his role as the designated pass-catching back, and the guy that they're going to use when they're trailing will also be Vereen, but Bolden and White are going to duke it out for reps, and Belichick could use the hot hand approach with those two guys. So I don't see Vereen's role changing, and you're going to look at him very much like you've looked at Shane Vereen in the past, or whether or not you start him. I think it's a lot of whether or not you think the Patriots will be behind in very many games, because Vereen does his best work when that team's behind and they need to keep passing.
Yeah, another bad injury. Victor Cruz going down for the Giants. What does that mean for the Giants wide receiving core? Who's the next man up here?
Yeah, well, everybody else benefits, even down to Preston Parker, who will get some extra reps now. But the main beneficiary will be Odell Beckham. Reuben Randall's going to continue with his role. He was already a starter, and I don't think anything changes for him. I don't think he gains new routes or more playing time. He already had all the playing time he needed. Beckham, though, will very likely pick up routes left by Victor Cruz, and I see his role in this offense growing pretty dramatically.
All right, Charge, Tom Brady, he's basically been dead to you this year.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks in a row.
As soon as I really go off on Brady, look what happens.
So now is Tom Brady back?
So, let's rewind things all the way back to the preseason. Brady had this amazing preseason, and I moved him, started the preseason maybe somewhere around like my number 19 quarterback, moved him all the way up to number 9 when I saw him in the preseason. But then he had these horrible 4 games that looked just like the awful games that he had at the end of last year. So I got very down on Brady. And I think now where he stands after a couple of good games is I think he goes from being unstartable to possible weekly starter. I'm not going to start him in tough matchups, particularly ones where his offensive line is likely to crumble, because that's the games that he's really been bad, is when the offensive line hasn't held up. But I love him this week against the Jets. I like him next week against the Bears. But his schedule's going to turn a lot tougher after that, and you'll need to be smart about where you start him. Brady clearly deserves a roster spot, but he is not an automatic starter.
All right, Bucs quarterback Mike Glennon, he's been quietly consistent.
Yes, he has.
And very good. He's been a regular, kind of a mainstay on the fantasyvictory.com sleepers list.
Yes, he has.
Where does he fit in the grand scheme of things, week in, week out?
It's my guy, Mike Glennon. Love Glennon. He has started 16 games as a guy who I think most people thought would start not even 16 in a career. He's thrown exactly 2 touchdowns in 11 of them. That's good production. That means he's gotten you 2 touchdowns in 2/3 of his games. 2 touchdowns is a good number. That is a 32-score season, which makes Glennon a top 10 quarterback. What's more, he has only been skunked twice in his 16 games. Glennon is quietly, Mike, almost matchup proof. The guy just performs every week.
Speaking of matchup proof, I'm a Lamar Miller owner.
All right.
Is he a starter week in, week out, depending on the opponent, or regardless of opponent?
It's going to be tempting. Miller's been dramatically better this year than in the past. He's averaging 5.2 yards per carry, which is obviously a great number and far better than anything else he's ever done. He has scored in 3 of 5 games, also a good sign. And while the Dolphins' offense is hardly electrifying, it is competent. But he's got a few tough matchups left on the schedule. He still has to face the Jets' elite run defense twice. And he's got other tough games, including Buffalo, Baltimore, and Detroit. So I'm not sure he's just an automatic starter in those games. He might be a flex starter in those games, or maybe even a guy that you just watch and you bench him those weeks. So I'm not ready to call Lamar Miller an every week game in and game out starter, but really happy with what we've seen this year.